I want to do a quick review. I listened to the Power Sound Audio, the 21 iPower subs, right? Because they got the TV2112 subs, and then they got the TV 21 iPower subs. They got the the 21-inch sealed 2112Ms. I've seen a couple of reviews. One review from the RAFCAVE and then one from Shane Lee, right? And I'm just like, why are they giving this company is such a bad rep with the sub? And I'm looking in the AVS forums and people are saying, well, oh no, Tom makes very, very good subs. And I'm like, well, I looked at the website, Power Sound Audio, and I'm like, well, some subs seem to be like out of stock, but he did have the 2112s, the TV 2112s that were in stock, but I'm like, I've never heard them, right? I've heard a lot of SVS. I've got dual PB4000s in my house, and one room that's got my Anthem 1140 in there, and then I've got PB2000s hooked up in another room that's got my AVM 90 on there, and it's just, I just like different receivers and processors for different rooms, like how they're made up or whatever. So, the AVM 90 doesn't have to be with the PB4000, both of the PB4000. Then I got another room that's got a Cinema 50 that's got SB 2000 Pros in there. And then I've been to Exponent, I've been to Audio Advice Live. I've heard a lot of SVS subwoofers. I've heard a lot of Perliston subwoofers. And, and I think, and this is me being honest about Perliston, I think a lot of that is marketing. I think these guys like Shane Lee and Audioholics and people like that, I've seen them in person dealing with the dealers and dealing with the people, in close relations with the people who actually try to sell you guys this stuff. And I think a lot of this is just marketing, and the manufacturers are in bed with these guys. And so that's why you always hear Perliston. So when I went to Audio Advice Live, I'm like, oh, they got a Perliston, I want to hear it. And I was underwhelmed by the towers. I was underwhelmed by the sub. And I just didn't understand what the big deal was other than it looked beautiful, right? And I'm like, I know it, it can move. It can thump. It's an 18-inch subwoofer. I know it could, do something, but I'm not really impressed at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm sitting in a nose, sat in different seats. I just didn't really understand what the big deal was with the Perliston subwoofers. Another youth man ended up doing, I think it was, he helped one of his friends set up, and he's got his own like YouTube channel, Youth Man. He was helping his friend. He's got like a garage cave type YouTube channel where he reviews electronics and stuff, and they were setting up like some Perliston subs, and the guy made a mistake, and he was like, well, originally I was thinking these subs sucked, like he accidentally said it. And I'm like, that his impression of those Perliston subs was my impression when I heard them at Audio Advice Live. Not when I saw them, I'm like, ooh, these are beautiful. But when I heard them, I'm like, I didn't really get the big deal, right? Fast forward now, so we got the TV 2112s, right? And then the 21 iPods or whatever that Tom is selling on Power Sound Audio. So I looked at the AVS forum. Everybody seemed to love Tom and Power Sound Audio, but I could never see, these subs in person, because it's like you got to know somebody who's got them, all of that. And so I'm like, asking, questions on the AVS forum, and, a guy hit me up. He was like, yo, I've got these subs. And he was like, you can come and you can listen to them. He's got a full theater set up. He's got 4 21 iPods. And he allowed me to come over there and listen to him. And I went there with an expectation to where, like, okay, if I love the way they sound, I'm probably gonna, just for kicks, you just get into the hobby of home theater. Like, I'll trade out my PB4000s for them if I really like them, right? So I went there and I listened to the subs. He played Edge of Tomorrow. Now, remember, Shane Lee said that this driver bottomed out, right? And this is the sealed version, but he said the driver bottomed out with Edge of Tomorrow in like different scenes, right, of different movies. The RAFCAVE said the sub bottomed out as well, right? So in my mind, I'm like, okay, turn up this Edge of Tomorrow, let me hear if the sub bottoms out. Now, the way the guy had the subs tuned was that they weren't I think he said he was running plus 6 dB from his tune that he had like an integrator come in and tune his subs at. So they weren't like really loud, you know, like how I would run my subs, not super loud, but loud. Like they weren't like that, you know, but that you knew they were there. You know, he turned off the bass shakers and he ran Edge of Tomorrow. He cranked it up. And I did not see any bottoming out of the driver at all. So what the RAFCAVE is talking about, I do not think is accurate. I think this guy was just trying to figure out a way to return that subwoofer, is what I think. You know, because and then he made other comments, the RAFCAVE, he was like, oh, well, it's not better than my 4 clip subwoofers. It's not fair to compare a 21-inch driver, or 21-inch subwoofer, one of them, to 4 subwoofers. Like, it's not really fair to do that. And then you listen to him talking about he had to wait to get his money and they had to like go through the sub, make sure nothing was wrong and all of that. He was kind of annoyed with that process. And it's kind of just clicked in my mind, like, this guy's just doing this for content. You know, after hearing those subs, I'm like, no, this guy's just doing this for content. Right. And then I looked at the Power Sound, the s2112m review from Shane Lee and listened to it again. And I'm like, I think this guy is probably upset that they didn't give him a review unit. That's what I think when I look at Shane Lee's video of the Power Sound audio review. He's upset that he didn't get a discount and he's upset that he didn't get a review unit. This is why I think that is, right? It's because why did he keep that sub for so long if it was so bad? He even tried to, like, you know, double back and have Gene from Audioholics on like a little podcast that he was doing and try to back him on that the sub wasn't good. And Gene, you know, he's in bed with these guys, so he's gonna like back him into that. He doesn't have a relationship, I don't think, with Tom, so he just backed what Shane said. Like, not that he heard the sub, but he just backed what Shane said, which I thought was like very interesting for him to do, because this is a guy that tests subs and, you know, it tries to give his opinion on what he feels is best from what he tested, right? But he didn't really test his sub. He's just going off of Shane Lee's comment. Because Shane said, well, didn't I call you and tell you, like, why does the sub sound like crap? It doesn't matter. I think you called him and you told him that because you were getting ready to do like a review to trash the subwoofer, is what I think. Now, if I'm comparing it to my PB4000, right? My dual PB4000s and the 2112s, I feel like you're going to get more impact, like within the 40 hertz range in terms of like the feel, like the initial bump, like the feel of the sub, right? It's what I felt. But around 40 hertz and down with some movies that we listen to, I know my PB4000s are louder, right? But I felt like the way he had these tuned, right? The 21 iPows, I felt like you got that initial bump, like within the 30-40 hertz range, you get the bump, but then it gets quiet, the sub, because they're not really tuned to be loud, you know what I mean? Like in lower frequencies. I think they're like tuned 17 hertz is what I think. You know what I mean? You know, the frequency response is lower than that, but that's why I kind of think they sound like they're tuned to that. Now, and I know we can't hear like below like a certain range, but it kind of, they feel like, you know, like the SVS is like they're loud, like them old THX sweeps, they're louder, you know, and they're quicker. Like when we play a Fury, when the machine gun is going, like in the tank fight or whatever, before the tank fight, like when they finally like go to battle and they're in the field or whatever, and the machine gun is going, you hear the do like the bass. The SVS is quicker. Obviously, the Power Sound audio's got a bigger driver, it's gonna be slower. But I feel like when you get below, I would say maybe 14 hertz or whatever, the sustained feel of LFE is bigger with the 21 iPows. And it could be because there were 4 in the room, you know, pressurizing the room at the same time, where I have dual PB4000s, you know. So he ran like a movie, I think it was Godzilla versus Kong, and they were like fighting in the city or whatever, and the LFE was just like, you can feel like, you know what I mean? Like the hairs raising, like you just know that energy is in a room with the 2112s. I mean, the 21 iPods. Whereas the PB4000s, it'll go towards being low, but then it's, you know, the LFE is there, but it's not as pronounced, right? But the sound that I like from the subwoofer, I feel like I enjoy a little bit better from the SVS. You know, it could just be my ears like more tuned to it, you know, than the 21 iPods. Like maybe I would have to have them in the room, my room, and run them like a lot longer. But you know, I didn't think they were bad subs at all. Like there was no bottoming out. Port chuffing was not there. And it's got like even though they're big subs, the port is not really that big for the sub. You know, I don't really get much port chuffing from my PB4000s, really. You know, I don't know how people have their systems tuned to where they're getting all of that port chuffing, but I don't really get that. You know, but mine is hooked up to my Anthem. I think the Anthem tunes them down to 15 hertz and then just lets them go. Whereas like I think when I was running my PB4000s on my Cinema 50, I did get port chuffing because Odyssey is not as aggressive with tuning the subs. So it depends on what you're using. My Denon 3800H, I think when I had those hooked up to my subs, I did get port chuffing. But the Anthem kind of controls like a lot of the sub to where that doesn't happen, you know. So even though it's loud and it's a big sound, you know, it's not port chuffing with the PB4000. But I didn't hear the 21 iPods do any port chuffing at all. You know, I thought they were decent. I didn't think they were destroying the PB4000s at all, you know, because like I said, there's things I liked about the PB4000s that, you know, I didn't like about the iPods, but things about the iPod I liked about them that I didn't like, you know, with PB4000 I didn't like that it did, right? So, you know, as far as like, I think he turned off his bass shakers and you could still feel like being hit like at super low frequencies, which my PB4000s cannot do that. So it depends on what you like. And again, like maybe he just didn't have the subs turned up super loud, you know, but you know, I thought they were decent for what they were. You know, if you look at the price of the iPod, the TV21 iPod, whatever, you look at the price of it and for what it can do, I think it's okay. You know, I don't think it's a bad price. I think with SVS, we're paying more for aesthetics than anything. Because like when you look at your PB4000, you're just like, or your PB16 or your PB17, you're like, okay, this is a nice looking subwoofer. Very nice. You know, and then on the, you don't have this on the PB17, but like on the PB16 Ultra and the PB4000, you got the nice digital like display. It just looks really good, and sitting in the room it looks good and it performs, you know. But does it go as low as a 21-inch subwoofer driver? No, it doesn't, you know. But does that matter? It comes down to the consumer. Me, when it gets super low, that's when my bass shakers kick in, you know, to fill that void. But going towards subsonic like frequencies, like I like the way my SVS subwoofer sounds. So I didn't feel like Tom subwoofers made me want to get rid of my PB4000s. If anything, it made me like them a little bit more in different ways, you know. But I do see the value in a 21-inch subwoofer. But the guy that let me listen to the subs, he said that he was thinking about getting rid of the 21 iPods to replace them with GSG subs or something else. And I think it could be like what I'm thinking is because like after 20, you know, when you get towards 20 hertz, they are kind of quiet, you know. And I think he probably want a little bit more. I know we can't really hear, you know what I mean? Maybe he wants a little bit more presence, you know, with the sub. Whereas the PB4000, I feel like going down to, even if I run it in extended mode, I felt like it was the extended mode, which is quieter than standard mode. I felt like extended mode was louder than the 21 iPods. you know. But one thing I did not hear is hissing, you know. But the guy told me that he did have originally hissing from his subwoofers, because one thing that people say about the power sound audio subs is that they hiss, you know. So they just sit there, power's running to them, and they're hissing. He did say he had to have like his breakers changed to get rid of the hissing from the subwoofers. So, you know, that was an issue that he dealt with. And that was one thing that I was kind of cautious about. Like, if I get these subs, am I going to deal with hissing? Because this guy named Matt, somebody did a home theater tour at his house on YouTube. And he had some 18-inch subwoofers. And, like, I ended up getting in touch with the guy from Discord. And I was like, man, I want those subs. And he was like, oh, well, I'm getting rid of them or whatever. And I'm just like, well, do they hiss? And he said, yeah. So, you know, so some people may have issues. Maybe if you have multiple things hooked up, maybe, I don't know. But if you got to switch breakers and do all of that to get rid of the hiss, that can create an issue. You know, maybe it's not on the level of how quiet the SVS amplifiers are, you know. So I don't, like my PP4000s, I don't hear anything coming from them at all. You know, like in terms of hiss or anything, like any popping, hissing, nothing. Like they're perfect, you know. So maybe that's, you know, they have more time to, you know, maybe just have more engineers figure out how not to have that happen. Because the guy who let me hear the 21 iPods, he said that I think they sent him something to. No, it was the guy with the 18s said that they sent him another plate amp, and then he had to like check the subs through the new plate amp to see whether or not the amp was the problem, and it was still hissing. So I don't know, you know, but that's something you need to think about, like whether or not you're going to get PSA subs or not. But as far as them bottoming out, I did not hear that. I think the power sound audio, like the 21 iPods or even the 2112, because I think the iPods are just 3 dB louder. I think those would be good support subs. Like if you have your two main subs and you have that in the back, just giving you that extra LFE, I think would be good. But relying on the 21-inch driver to do everything leaves things to be desired within the film, right? Like I said, they're not as quick. So, you know, from watching different movies, you're like, okay, well, I know there's something that I'm missing here. I think you would get that if you relied on these to be your main subs, you know. And when he ran with the 21 iPods, when he ran Blade Runner sounded really good, you know. But in my mind, I'm like, I've heard the PB4000s be a little quicker to this specific parts, like of the scene. But I think the LFE was very, very pronounced and would make anybody happy, you know. So I don't know, man. Shout out to Tom. I think he's still got those available. Will I be buying the Power Sound Audio 21-inch subs? Probably not. You know, if I get them, like I said, if I get one, it'll probably be like a support sub or something like that. But you know, I do want to hear the JTR Captivators first, like the 2400 Captivators, because I hear that those are really good. I don't like the way they look, but I hear they're good, you know. But I can get one more sub to kind of play the support role, you know. So I don't know. We'll end up seeing. Maybe I can hear some of those. Youth Man said that I can come to his house and listen to his theater. He's got dual, I think, RS2s, you know, from JTR. So I kind of want to hear those. I don't really have room for RS2s. I don't really like Seal subs. I don't really think they, you know what I mean? I always feel like I'm missing something with Seal, but he said his goes down to 5 hertz. I like the way they look, you know, but I don't know. I kind of do want to go and listen to those. But, you know, JTR, it's really just Youth Man and 3 other people. It's like this black guy that sometimes he does the podcast with Shane Lee. He talks about JTR. And then I think it's that garage guy I was telling you about that slipped up and said the Perlistons weren't really that good, you know. But it's only like a handful of people talking about JTR, you know, and they're trying to sell you on JTR. So who knows, you know, how they really sound. So I want to actually hear them Whereas like SVS, like you can hear him. Whereas like JTR, you got to get in touch with the guy and email, and you got to pay for shipping to get the sub to you. And then I finally found a real person who had JTRs on YouTube, and he said when he got his captivators in there, I think he got the captivator ULF or something like that. But he said when he got his captivator in the house, one of the drivers, like there was air leaking, and he had to have another driver sent out and then replace one that had the leak. So, and he was he was like one of the only real people that I heard with the JTR. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff with theater, I'm starting to find out, you want to hear things for yourself. We kind of try to rely on other people's opinions. It's not a good thing, because even clips, right? And I know a lot of people love clip speakers. They're subwoofers. I heard those subwoofers, and I do not know why people like clip subwoofers at all. I don't get it. I know they're entry level. I know they're inexpensive, just to say you got a sub, but I don't understand why people like them. SVS, I have a lot of those subs. I love their customer service, but I do feel like they can go lower than what they're allowing, and maybe they don't allow them to go as low as they could potentially go, is because you would probably get a slower subwoofer. So I don't know, but it's good to try out different things. Go to Audio Advice Live, go to Exponent if you can, and hear different things for yourself. And another thing you find out is that a lot of these guys, like, I don't want to say no names, like they don't even really take the time out to listen to things. Like they just go there to take pictures and to go and set up their cameras to review whatever's going to be next on their channel. And you'll hear them say, "Oh, I haven't heard those. But they're quick to give you an opinion on things, which I think it's silly. You know what I mean? But that's my opinions on it. Like, I'm in the home theater, but and I really like subwoofers. I think I like my theater setup. I think I do. One day we'll end up showing y'all. But I'm out, y'all. Peace.